and Border Patrol agents. That's enough.
If we were able to prevent these folks from entering our soil, then there's no due process rights.
I have not called for the harm of anybody.
If you see anybody from that cabinet, you push back on them.
It's disappointing. No one wants to see anyone harassed, kicked out of a restaurant, but we do want discourse.
President Trump demanding infamous FBI agent Peter Strzok publicly face the American people.
I could not agree with him more. This is the most profound question of our era. Was there a conspiracy?
51% approve of how our commander-in-chief is handling the economy.
That is a record in a CNBC poll.
Well, it's happening. It's not build that wall anymore. It's continue building that wall because we're building it.
Blacktop gold, falling fast, topping off the tank with some never look back. Chase that sun, race that wind.
Black top gone. What comes to mind when you hear that?
I guess it means people are racing.
And I remember in my middle school, our playground was way on top of the hill, and there was a blacktop where you played basketball.
Right.
So whenever I hear the word blacktop, that's what I think about. Go up on the blacktop. We'll meet you at the blacktop. We're going to play games up there.
See, we used to do that only when it rained. They go, you got to stay on the blacktop only. You can't go on the grass when it rains. That's blacktop.
Because you would track in the mud inside the school.
And we don't want that. We also don't want to wreck the lawn. Because it's crabgrass season, and that's what the kids played on throughout my youth. We've never had regular grass.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Hey, thanks very much for joining us. If you were watching the channel last night in the 7 o'clock hour, you saw the President of the United States eventually got to the great state of South Carolina.
Where the blacktop is.
That's right. West Columbia, South Carolina. He was there to encourage people to vote in today's primary, where Henry McMaster, the current governor, is locking horns with another Republican by the name of John Warren, a 39-year-old Marine vet. The president would like to see McMaster return to the job, and so he encouraged people to come out and vote today.
That's right. Remember Nikki Haley, when she was appointed as the ambassador, he was Lieutenant Governor McMaster. Yeah. Then he became governor, and now he's in a tight race. He did get more of the votes in the primary on June 12th, but not enough to get 50%. So today is the runoff for the Republican that will be running for governor in November.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so America just realized there's a problem at our border because President Trump became president. Besides that, they really had no idea. Now everyone's saying, wow, this is a bit of a mess. Now the president talked about what happened last week and where he stands when it comes to what's going to happen this week.
If you don't have borders, you don't have a country. Well, it's happening. It's not build that wall anymore. It's continue building that wall because we're building it. We're building the wall. We're fixing the wall. We're spending a lot of money, and we're going for more, and we'll get it done. But Democrats, they want open borders, and they don't mind crime. And when I heard them talking about the children, first of all, they were using pictures taken in 2014 when Barack Obama was president. I wasn't president. And the Democrats don't like ICE. These are great, brave, tough people. These people are much tougher than MS-13. The Democrats want to protect illegals coming into this country, some of whom are not good.
So there you've got the president reminding people, Barack Obama, during his administration, they did exactly the same thing. In fact, we heard a couple of days ago from Jay Johnson, who had been the Secretary of Homeland Security. He admitted they detained children and families, and yet there were no protests in any of their yards.
It was a great interview, right? He was very honest.
He was very honest, and that very forthcoming, and that's why the president, I think last night, said, hey, and remember all those pictures of those the cage rooms? Those were taken from 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
That's the bottom line. Mm-hmm. I think America's smart enough to realize what's happening. This has been a problem. Parents have been separated from their kids in other administrations too. And this president is made aware of it because so many people came forward. They saw the pictures. That it created a firestorm. And then he said, okay, I want to fix this problem. They need to be together. And now Republicans are really trying. They're eager to get this bill passed to say we want parents, because kids can only be detained according to law for 20 days. And
That's
now
right.
they're trying to fix it so that they figure out what happens to these individuals. Do they stay or do they go back? It depends on their situations and if their country's dangerous.
Jay Johnson was one of those level-headed people to serve under President Obama, in my humble opinion. He says, listen, this is an ongoing problem, and they know exactly what's going on in other countries in our country. And when President Trump took over, the word went out he's going to be tough on the border. The influx stopped. And then when they realized they could still get through, they started pushing people through, and a lot of these smugglers were the ones doing it. There's other people who don't know how to get here. The smugglers do. They take a huge amount of money, and these people go with these strangers. A lot of them are bad actors, and they get across. Now, what Jay Johnson was trying to say is the same thing what former Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly is saying, and the same thing is Secretary Nielsen saying. It's not a Republican and Democratic problem. It is a huge problem,
Right.
And we have to define our borders. Ultimately, we have to help out Central and South America so people want to stay in their own countries. So ABC went down to the border, and I don't know what their objective was, maybe to find the truth or maybe to point fingers. But if you're pointing at Border Patrol, you got a problem because reality snuck up on ABC. Listen.
There's a smuggler. Espérate ahí, espérate ahí. On the South Texas border, an alleged human smuggling operation as it happens. Border Patrol agent Robert Rodriguez chasing an alleged smuggler, escaping back to Mexico across the Rio Grande.
That's a smuggler?
This is the smuggler right here.
¿Cuándo le pagaron?
I asked him if he was paid, but no answer.
And Agent Rodriguez, you can't go in there.
I cannot go in the river to apprehend him. As long as it goes back south, I'm all right.
And that's why the smuggler was not wearing a shirt, because he knew that if he was going to if Border Patrol was giving chase, he would just jump in the water and Border Patrol could not stop him. In fact, the agent went after the smuggler and left behind who he had smuggled into the country. Apparently, he had just dropped off a teenage boy and two mothers and their children, including a 1-year-old. But once again, the agent could not get in the water, even though it would be so easy to grab him and then charge him with human smuggling.
And then
Couldn't
you look
do
at
it.
those people they left behind. You see how desperate their life was to pay off somebody who they probably don't know, give maybe their family savings to get over here, and then now they're going to get processed on some level, depending on what we ultimately decide is our policy.
So often, though, the smugglers bring a number of children in with grown-ups, and then supposedly the children belong to the grown-ups, and then they do a little check and realize, wait a minute, those were just smugglers, and there were kids next to grown-ups who were trying to get in separately.
If you watch the whole
no
report,
family connection.
There's a mother who brings in a baby, and she says, my husband was killed by gang members, and that's why I'm escaping. I can imagine as a mother, her heart's racing. She doesn't want to get caught. She wants to give her child a better life. The Border Patrol agent says, we're going to detain them, learn their story, and goes on to say if they could apply for asylum if that story is factual. But what I did learn from that report, too, we'll show you this picture. It's a picture of what one of those holding facilities looks like, a detention center, and then it has the gate inside it. Right. And there's one of the pictures. That's right. And the reporter asks the Border Patrol agent, what is that? Do they stay there for a long time? And he said, no, they're just there for a few hours while we do the paperwork. And they're detained and they're held there. And then we place them in a tent city, I assume, or wherever with beds and all of that. But that's just while they do.
And now what we're doing is taking money from the Coast Guard, which helps guard our coast from illegal drugs and everything else, and we're putting it into these facilities, and we're taking additional money from defense, and we're converting defense military bases for this situation at our border. It is a problem. As soon as Democrats and Republicans get off their party hats and start solving a problem, we're not going to get anywhere. And I hope they vote on something that gets through the House, despite what the president says this week. I hope they get something and force the Senate to act.
Well, it sounds like they will vote on something. It sounds like it will not pass. However, there are apparently Republicans in the Senate who are crafting a targeted bill that would address the problem. Maxine Waters was out, in Los Angeles over the weekend, and she famously said to her supporters, hey, if you see anybody who is in the cabinet or a supporter of the President of the United States who has instituted this policy regarding separation of children from their families, then get up in their faces and make noise. Watch it.
I have not called for the harm of anybody. This president has lied again. And so our members of the Democratic caucus are talking about civility, and that makes good sense. But protest is civility. Protest is about peaceful resistance to the kind of actions that we're experiencing from this president. This president will try to do everything to divert our attention. He calls me names, he calls everybody names. As a matter of fact, we expect that from him. I've said nothing like that.
Right.
I've talked about peaceful protests.
Right. Oh, really? It's okay? If part of peaceful protest is stopping Stephen Miller from going to a restaurant, Nielsen family from eating at a restaurant, stopping Pam Bondi from going to a movie, Sarah Huckabee Sanders for having dinner with her family, I'm not okay with that. And it shouldn't be okay if Republicans did it to Democrats. I just think people are allowed to do their job. People can have an opinion, but you're also allowed to live your life, or else nobody's going to be serving in government. And by the way, I'm worried about the safety of everybody serving publicly.
It dramatically increases the chance of violence. And you know what the conversation is now amongst our lawmakers? If someone does this to you, how are you going to handle yourself? Don't react. Don't throw a punch. I mean, that conversation shouldn't be had. And we saw those happening. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, all that happened. And then Maxine Waters has that presser in L.A. and says, continue it.
Sure, and we had Lee Carter on with us about 45 minutes ago, and she said that this could backfire on the Democrats, that is to say, and the fact that the Trump supporters would be essentially victimized by it, it could actually help Donald Trump get reelected down the road.
Full credit to Senator Schumer. He was very succinct and direct. Not okay from what we saw. He called an end to it. Bring back civility. I thought that was great. At 11 minutes after the hour, speaking of great.
Let's hand it over to the great Jillian Mealy.
Thank you. Good morning. I don't know what I did to deserve that, but I'll take it. All right, some news headlines for you now. The man accused of ambushing and killing a fire captain expected to face a judge today. 77-year-old Thomas Kim charged with murdering Captain David Rosa. Police say Kim set a fire at his retirement home to lure first responders, then opened fire when they arrived.
Firefighters across the region, across our state, and across our country right now are putting themselves in harm's way in service to their community. Captain Rosa answered that call this morning of service to his community, and he paid the ultimate sacrifice.
A candlelight vigil held overnight outside Captain Rosa's firehouse in Long Beach, California. He leaves behind a wife and 2 kids. A second firefighter was also shot but will be okay. President Trump offering support for Katie Arrington in her home state of South Carolina.
Before we begin, let's all take a moment to send our love to Katie Arrington. Katie is a very special person. She was out there right from the beginning.
The Republican candidate for Congress is recovering after a car accident and multiple surgeries. Doctors say she will make a quick recovery. Arrington is coming off an upset win in the South Carolina primary. Voters hitting the polls in 7 states today. Candidates hoping for victories in runoffs and primaries. In Utah, Mitt Romney is up against Republican challenger Mike Kennedy. Both of them forced into a GOP Senate primary after neither won enough votes to secure the nomination at the state GOP convention in April. And convicted leaker Chelsea Manning on the ballot in Maryland. She's challenging Senator Ben Cardin in the Democratic Party. Let's look at your headlines. Should be an interesting day for a lot of folks.
7 states, time to vote.
We'll have all the results tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Meanwhile, Sarah Huckabee Sanders firing back after she was kicked out of that Virginia restaurant. And there's another part of the story that you're not going to see on the other channels. So we've heard it from her father last night. We're going to explain that to you coming up next.
And the late night feud between President Trump and Jimmy Fallon is heating up.
Jimmy Fallon apologized. He apologized for humanizing me. The poor guy. He's lost. He looks like a lost soul.
Jimmy Fallon's response overnight coming up.
We just blow smoke. Hey, yeah. We just blow.
Is unacceptable.
It comes after she was kicked out of that Red Hen restaurant in Virginia.
Well, Doug McElway is live outside that Red Hen restaurant in Lexington, Virginia, and joins us right now. Doug?
Morning, Steve. And all is quiet outside the Red Hen at this hour in Lexington, Virginia. That may change later today when the restaurant reopens.
I'm sure
Tuesday night, 5:30. It is always closed on Mondays. Since the story first came out, however, a slightly darker picture is painted of the owner, Stephanie Wilkinson, than was first reported. And it comes from Governor Huckabee, the father of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who spoke about it to Lori Ingram on her radio show.
The owner of the Red Hen, because nobody's told this, then followed them across the street, called people and organized a protest, yelling and screaming at them from outside the other restaurant.
Last night we went door to door to some other restaurants in town to try to determine whether that was true. In fact, we got a lot of no comments from restaurateurs who just want to steer clear of this story. The President of the United States does not want to steer clear of it. One of the tweets he tweeted out yesterday said this, quote, "The Red Hen restaurant should focus more on cleaning its filthy canopies, doors, and windows, badly needs a paint job, rather than refusing to serve a fine person like Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I always had a rule," he writes, "if a restaurant is dirty on the outside, it's dirty on the inside." Well, not long after that tweet, we saw a guy with a squeegee coming up to the Red Hen restaurant, and he went to work on the windows. Don't know if there's a correlation there. But on a more serious note, this has become a flashpoint, not only in Lexington, but across the state of Virginia. The Republican Party of Virginia tweeted on Monday, "Once again, the intolerant left has shown its true colors. It's asking Virginians to sign a petition to boycott the Red Hen, quote, to show the Red Hen that patriotic Trump supporters are the silent majority in Virginia." But we've also learned that the owner of the Red Hen is the executive director of an influential business group in Lexington called Main Street Lexington. And a passerby who came by us at this location yesterday handed us a flyer in which she said that our business, which is completely unrelated to the Red Hen, is under attack. Lexington is under attack. She just wants this to go away, and a lot of other people in Lexington do as well. Back to you in New York.
Hey, Doug, they only have 28 tables. Why are they kicking out an 8-top with 28 tables?
Good question. All right, and there goes the garbage truck.
Good question.
Thank you very much, Mr. McElway.
That looks like a nice town.
It does indeed, but didn't realize the owner of the restaurant ran after the party and then heckled them across the street at some other restaurant, according to the dad.
All right, disgraced FBI agent Peter Strzok set to testify behind closed.
So far, time now for your news by the numbers. First, 6.7%. That's how much new home sales increased in the U.S. last month. Sales were up nearly 18% in the South and fell flat everywhere else. Next, 5. That's how many types of Warner aluminum ladders are being recalled. 78,000 of them being pulled from Lowe's and Home Depot. There's a risk the ladders can break when people use them. And finally, 200 stores. That's what's left of Toys R Us, and they'll all be officially closed by Friday. The iconic toy store announced it was going out of business in March, 6 months after filing for bankruptcy. End of an era there, Brian.
All right, thanks, Jillian. Disgraced FBI agent Peter Strzok set to testify behind closed doors Friday, but President Trump has a different idea. In a tweet, he suggests, quote, the hearing of Peter Strzok and the other hating frauds at the FBI and DOJ should be shown to the public on live TV, not a closed-door hearing that nobody will see. We should expose these people for what they are. They should be full transparency. GOP Congressman Jim Jordan sits on the House Judiciary Committee and will be hearing Strzok's testimony. He joins us now to weigh in. Hey, Congressman, why don't we all see this? Why can't we see that on TV? We saw James Comey and the other controversial interviews. Why not this?
Yeah, transparency is important. We're certainly not getting enough of it from the Department of Justice. But I do agree with having Peter Strzok first in a closed session where we can ask him all kinds of questions and we have longer than 5 minutes and you can get the answers that we need so that if and when there's going to be an open hearing, we will know that information. Like Peter Strzok opens the Russian investigation on July 31st. It's been reported the next day he goes to London. What was he doing in London? Who did he talk to? Did he talk to Christopher Steele, the guy who wrote the dossier? I mean, there's a host of questions that we need to get through. And so I'm fine with it first starting behind closed doors, and then if it needs to be public, we can do that too.
But Congressman, why can't I hear that answer to that question?
You can, and I think you will at some point. But look, this is the first time we've been able to talk to Strzok. We actually wanted to do this months ago. Mr. Meadows and I have been pushing to have Lisa Page and Peter Strzok for a deposition months ago, but we're just now getting there. So but let's do the deposition, and then if we need to, let's have a hearing publicly so the American people can get all the information.
What makes you think he'll agree to that once you get a hold of him behind closed doors?
Well, you got the subpoena power, Brian. If the chairman of the committee can subpoena him, and he has to come. Now, he could always take the fifth. Who knows if he'll do that? But you have the subpoena power, which is an important power, and could be used if we need to.
All right, next topic. You, others, Devin Nunes in particular, have requested documents from the DOJ and FBI, and you gave them to deadline after deadline. They gave you some documents. You say it's not enough. What are you looking for?
Well, we've got 2 subpoenas that have been sent to them. They haven't complied with the subpoenas. There have been other document requests they haven't complied with. And Chairman Nunes sent a letter on Sunday that they haven't complied with as of 5 o'clock yesterday. He specifically wants to know, were informants put in the Trump campaign? If so, how many? And were they paid by the FBI? And he can't get a straight answer from the Department of Justice. So we're at the point now where there's a resolution that Mr. Meadows and I and others have introduced, sent to the House resolution on Mr. Rosenstein saying you will have X number of days to get him to us. If not, then we will move to contempt and we will move to impeachment. The Speaker of the House has assured me and Congressman Meadows that he will bring that up this week if, in fact, they don't comply.
Right.
So it's now in the Speaker's court. I think it's time for that sense of Congress resolution to be put on the floor and the full House put their weight behind that message and say it's time for DOJ to do their job or we will move to impeachment of Mr. Rosenstein.
All right, let me tell you what they're saying. The DOJ says the Justice Department responded to the House Intel Committee and the chairman, telling him he already has the documents and answers he's been inquiring about. And then Adam Schiff says this: under the guise of oversight, the president's allies continue to seek documents in a pending investigation for the purpose of assisting the Trump legal team for its part in disclosing to Congress information about the pending Russia investigation. The DOJ is departing again from existing policy. What's your reaction to this counter argument?
It's a simple question. Who are you going to believe? Chairman Nunes, who's been pushing to get the answers, or Rod Rosenstein, who we know has threatened committee staffers on the House Intelligence Committee, according to news reports by Fox News, Catherine Herridge, or Rod Rosenstein, who we have caught hiding information from us, specifically redacting information in those text messages that shows that Peter Strzok and Judge Contreras, one of the FISA court judges, were friends. So who are you going to trust? Devin Nunes, who says you haven't given them to us, or Rod Rosenstein, who has threatened committee staffers and been caught hiding information from us. Also was hiding the fact that Andy McCabe spent $70,000 on a table over at the FBI. So do you trust the people who've been caught lying or caught hiding stuff and threatening people, or do you trust Chairman Nunes? I know where I'm at. I think I know where the American people are at.
Next, GOP lawmakers, not you, about 9 of them, sign a letter asking for everyone working on the Mueller probe to have their names released, because we don't know who worked and who is working for the Mueller probe. Why? I'm sure you support this. What is the problem here? And has there been pushback already? And is that why it came to this?
Well, I think what the reason is FBI lawyer number 2. In Mr. Horowitz's report last week, we find out it wasn't just Strzok, it wasn't just Page, it was 3 other individuals at the FBI who had this extreme bias, this animus towards President Trump, including this guy, FBI lawyer number 2, who, oh, by the way, was on the Clinton investigation team, was also on the FBI's investigation team into the Russia and Trump probe, and now was put on Mr. Mueller's team. So that's, I think, the catalyst for all this. And so the president's right. Let's have transparency. Let's know who's doing what and who's on what team and what their names are. So I'm all for that.
And yes or no, are you going to vote for that moderate proposal, the immigration proposal up this week?
No, I'm for the bill that got 193 votes. That's consistent with what we told the American people and consistent with what the president told the American people. That's the bill that should pass. And frankly, if we'd had a stronger whip effort, I think, from our leadership, they kept saying, oh, we only got 150 votes. We got 193 votes. We were so close to getting there. Let's focus on that bill, because that's the one that we told the American people we would pass.
So you blame Steve Scalise?
No, I'm saying if we'd have had the same kind of intensity, well, but I'm talking about the whole leadership. Steve's not the only one who whipped. The whole team whips. But we didn't have the same kind of intensity on that bill that we've had on other pieces of legislation. And we were told all along that only has 150, 160 votes. Well, when it was put out there on the floor in front of God and everybody, we got 193 votes. So let's start from that premise. And if there's small changes we can make to that and get that bill across the finish line, that's what we should do, because that's consistent with the mandate of the election.
Later, we're going to find out when Jim Jordan was wearing that jacket that we saw in your headshot, because I never see you with a jacket. That was your tease. Thanks, Mr. Jordan.
You bet. Thanks, Brian.
All right, straight ahead. The video is unreal. You got a boat bursting into flames in the middle of the ocean. 6 people trapped on board. Watch.
Come on, boys. Let's go. She's going.
Wow, the dramatic moments obviously caught on camera. Plus, Anthony Scaramucci, I believe he's Italian, Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan, and Ben Shapiro, all live coming up. And it's 65 feet long, cooks up to 2,500 bratwursts an hour, and it's on our plaza. Who is hungry? We're going to feed you. Nitrates included.
To let go of the 2016 election. At a speech in the UK, she trashed the Electoral College and compared President Trump to Turkish President Erdogan.
Turkey also shows that political and intellectual elites persistently underestimate the threat which these kinds of leaders pose to the survival of democratic institutions.
Erdogan just won re-election despite jailing thousands of opponents over the last few years. A dramatic rescue after a boat burst into flames. Just look, 6 people trapped on board near Fort Lauderdale. A family on a fishing trip hearing the calls for help and rushing to save them. One man nearly falling overboard as they jumped ship.
Come on, boys. Let's go. She's going.
Wow, everyone on board is okay. It's not clear what started that fire. Hitching a highway ride on the hood of a car. Look at this man holding onto the car with one hand and holding his phone with the other as the car flies 70 miles per hour down I-95 in South Florida. No word on why he was on the car or if he got off safely. Florida Highway Patrol is investigating, but boy, that is strange and dangerous. The feud between President Trump and Jimmy Fallon heating up. Trump lashing out at the late-night host after he apologized for playing with his hair before the election. Fallon said it humanized him.
Jimmy Fallon apologized. He apologized for humanizing me. The poor guy. He's lost. He looks like a lost soul.
Fallon firing back overnight on his show.
When I saw that Trump insulted me on Twitter, I was going to tweet back immediately, but I thought I have more important things to do. And then I thought, wait, shouldn't he have more important things to do?
President Trump says Fallon should be thankful for the ratings from his 2016 interview. That's a look at your headlines, and what can I say? Everyone ditched me. They went outside because there's food out there.
Exactly right, Jillian. Good thing we skipped breakfast. The Johnsonville Big Taste Grill back here on the plaza firing up. It's the largest bratwurst party you will ever see on 18 wheels.
And here now are crewmasters Jay Wetzel and Chris Hightower. Welcome, guys. Thanks for bringing your truck.
Hey, this is amazing. We're so happy to be here.
And take a look at the grill right over there. Ed, swing around and take a look at what Janice is grilling up. You guys have been with us before with this. Explain this particular piece of machinery.
So the Johnsonville Big Taste Grill, it's 65 feet long. It exists with 440,000 BTUs. We can crank out about...
how many BTUs?
440,000. And we can cook, what is it, 750 brats at one time? 2,500 in an hour, which is a large amount.
You just left Washington, D.C. You were helping to raise money for USO. You've raised $4 million for charities around the country. And you're here in New York because you're heading to Coney Island for the 4th of July for the big hot dog eating contest, right?
Right. Yeah, we've got, we're partnerships with the American Cornhole League. So they've got a tournament going on there as well. So we're a sponsor for that. So we're their cornhole guys. Yeah.
I didn't know they had an American Cornhole League.
By the way, Corn got a standing ovation before this, got hoots and hollers. Steve's the expert in this, but it seems like people are getting more into grilling than ever before. And as you see the magnitude of this truck and all the grills you have, I'm wondering, is it just me or is you finding that? Look, the people are getting more into grilling.
Oh, yeah. I think with barbecue as a whole, jumping up in scope, grilling in general, and they're wanting all the tips and the tricks, which is really great. And you can always go to johnsonville.com to learn all about that kind of stuff.
Janice, look at this. This is a great idea. This is a muffin tin. Ooh, I'm about to fall through the
Yeah, so what we've done here is if you're looking to creative ways to top your brat, which is the nice thing. So we've created a nice little tin, has all different varieties of stuff in there that you can throw on your brat to make it your own, utilizing a Johnsonville brat.
The other thing you say you determine slow and low?
Yeah, so we like the low and slow concept because the idea is you want to wait until that brat starts to sing without busting. Without busting completely that casing on the outside.
Here's JD. She's dressed her bratwurst.
What exactly is the difference in brat and a hot dog?
Chris?
Actually, a hot dog is a conglomeration of different types of spices.
The stuff
and
you
meats.
don't want to know what's in it, right?
It's a question mark, isn't it? Once we know all the ingredients, that is an all-natural pork bratwurst right there. It's just, it's a natural pork flavor, a little bit of pork brat. It's just delicious, isn't it?
Absolutely. Hey, Ed, can you swing around and get a shot of those people right there? Woo-hoo! Okay, folks, who's ready for breakfast? Brat style. All right, very nice. Brats for breakfast. Take that,
Well, we'll
Captain
feed
Crunch. Well, you guys have been traveling for 24 years with this great big grill. Thank you very much for stopping by our location.
Yes. It's a great thing you guys are doing. And it seems like you're having the most fun of anyone this summer.
We've helped we do a lot of partnerships with veterans communities and stuff like
Absolutely.
that.
You've raised a lot of money.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
guys,
thank you
very
guys.
much.
Thanks for what you do for charity.
Thank you guys.
Meanwhile,
Not yet.
I've got one down at the end with my name on it. Meanwhile, voters heading to the polls in 7 states today as we close in on the midterms. We've got the top 5 races to
Marijuana. The drug is called Epidiolex. It treats 2 rare forms of epilepsy. It is made with CBD, a chemical compound of cannabis that does not give users a high. Clinical trials show that it could reduce seizures by 40%. It's expected to be available in the fall. And a police dog sniffs out $10 million worth of illegal marijuana. The canine finding more than 1,500 pounds of pot and other cannabis products during a traffic stop in Chicago. Steve?
All right. Thank you very much, Ainsley. On the heels of President Trump's rally in South Carolina last night, voters there in 6 other states are heading to the polls this morning. And the president yesterday encouraged people to get out and vote. Here to break down the top 5 races to watch is Republican pollster Justin Wallen. Justin, good morning to you.
Morning.
All right. As we march to the midterms, those are the states we're going to focus on 5 because Mitt Romney's obviously going to win Utah big time, right?
One would think.
All right. Meanwhile, let's go. This is what the president was talking about. These are both Republicans. This is 39-year-old vet John Warren facing off against Governor Henry McMaster. Who's going to wind up with the crown after tonight?
Well, we think McMaster. And what's interesting about this race is this is one of these kind of proxy fights of Trump, but it's a Trump supporter versus a Trump supporter.
They're both.
They're both. But McMaster has been chosen by the president. So in this case, it.
And in fact, the president and the vice president have both gone down there to stump for him.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go out to Colorado. You've got the Republican Walker Stapleton versus Jared Polis, the Democrat.
This is fascinating because in Colorado, it's an open primary like California. So voters can vote for whoever they wish, regardless of party. And what we're seeing is even though it's a purple state and the outgoing incumbent is really a centrist, folks are moving to the right or to the left, the leading candidates. And in this case, Walker Stapleton has raised his hand and said, I support Trump. Meanwhile, Jared Polis has said, I support universal health care and an expansion of marijuana.
So you got a clear choice out in Colorado. Meanwhile, let's talk about Maryland. The current incumbent governor, Larry Hogan, is squaring off against Mr. Baker and Mr. Jealous.
Right. So we've got a string of Democratic candidates in this primary. Hogan is unopposed, but on the Republican side, but he's doing some interesting things. Rather than raising his hand to be with Trump, in this case, he's distancing himself, and most recently pulling back his state's National Guard folks from the border to protest the separation of families issue. So it's also a little bit of a proxy on Trump within that state.
So he's backing away from the president because Maryland, for the most part, is a blue state.
Yeah, it really is. He's in a tough spot.
All right. Meanwhile, let's take a look out in New York's 14th district. You've got Democrat Crowley versus Alexandria Cortez, that is to say. He's the incumbent. Does he have the edge?
Yeah, he's going to win. But the interesting thing about this race is it's going to show some degree of the strength of the emerging Latino vote. So she's a Latina activist, and he actually has, interestingly, started to speak Spanish.
And this is, oops, that was it. The district is way down near New York City, obviously. So it's clearly a blue district.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
See, when you touch the screen, it goes to the next one. And here we are. We're out in Oklahoma, and apparently today, and coming up forward, they're going to decide whether or not to legalize marijuana.
Right. So
for
this
medical purposes.
It all starts over in California, and now we're over in Oklahoma. So voters are going to decide whether to legalize medical marijuana, and it appears with the public polling now that it's poised to win.
All right. Step in just a little bit, and let me ask a little bit about Mitt Romney. He came out in the local paper yesterday in Salt Lake City and essentially said, going forward, if I win, I will be a critic of the president, but at the same time, I support what he's done, a lot of it, so far in the first year and a half.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Romney's kind of had that tough knife edge to walk. He's been extremely critical of the president in the past, and the reality is, if he's going to win a Republican race, he really kind of needs to line himself up, especially in Utah.
And I believe he's squaring off against Mike Kennedy, which would mean finally Mitt Romney beat a Kennedy.
There you go.
He's been trying to do that for a while. All right. We thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good analysis. All right. Meanwhile, coming up, Maxine Waters tripling down on her calls to confront Trump officials in public. Anthony Scaramucci is here in about 12 minutes for a reaction. And we've been telling you about what happened to Sarah Huckabee Sanders over the weekend. Well, our next guest knows how she feels. He says he's been blacklisted from Hollywood simply for being conservative. Antonio Sabato Jr. joins us live next. But first, on this day in history back in 1987, I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston, #1, coast to coast.
I attempted to have dinner with my family. I was asked to leave because I work for President Trump. We are allowed to disagree, but we should be able to do so freely and without fear of harm. The calls for harassment and push for any Trump supporter to avoid the public is unacceptable.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders addressing being kicked out of that Virginia restaurant because she worked for the president. This situation was one all too familiar to actor Antonio Sabato Jr., who says he was blacklisted by Hollywood for supporting President Trump at the 2016 Republican convention. Here with more is the actor and Republican candidate for Congress in California, Antonio Sabato Jr. Antonio, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
You're welcome.
Good morning,
Good morning.
America.
Good morning.
Yes.
You said you were blacklisted. Explain what happened to you.
You know, when I came back from Cleveland, and I was an honor to speak for the president and for the United States of America, and I came back to Los Angeles, and I was blacklisted. You know, my agents, my managers, and commercial agent, they were all gone. You know, over one day, and
Really?
because of my attachment to the president and my appreciation for the president, my support for him, and that has to stop, you know. But that made me only stronger, and that's why I'm here fighting for Ventura County, and I'm going to win in November for the American people. We're going to do it together, and it's a very exciting time. But you got to keep God close and keep moving forward.
His work slowed down for you as well because of it?
Yeah, very much so. And you know, I have 3 beautiful children, and you know, I've been working as an actor for 30 years, and I've been very blessed to come to the greatest country in the world. But I think we're fighting the fight, and at the end of the day, we're going to win. And we have God on our side, and I believe that I'm doing the right thing. And I'm going to keep my faith and keep moving work harder and harder every day.
Knowing what you know now, would you have done things differently?
No. You know, I sleep good at night. My integrity is strong, and I know that I'm doing it for the right reasons. And we should debate things, our differences, but at the end of the day, we should be cordial and love one another and move forward and help each other and help our neighborhoods, help California, help the United States. That's what we have to do. The American people are first in my book.
I want to get your reaction to what some folks in Hollywood are saying or doing. John Legend, he's calling on Sarah Huckabee Sanders to resign if she doesn't want to be harassed. This is what he tweeted. He said, if she doesn't want to be held accountable for the administration's evil, she can resign and denounce it. What do you think? Should she have to leave her position so that she doesn't get harassed?
Absolutely not. She's doing her job. She's doing an amazing job. She's very smart, articulate. She's doing that every day with the most evil people, just asking the horrendous questions, you know, every single day. And she's doing amazing. So I give her credit for it. So just keep doing your job. And the American people are with her, and we're going to do great things. You know, I'm very positive that after all this, this country is going to get stronger and better.
Okay, Mira Sorvino, that actress, she says that we are pre-Nazi Germany. Evan Rachel Wood, another actress, goes on to say that she's going to have a hunger strike now for families that are separated at the border. What do you think?
Well, it's offensive to me specifically, my family. You know, my grandmother escaped Auschwitz. Her brother and my great-grandparents died there. My mother had to escape the Communist Party from Prague during the 60s. So my family, my bloodline's been through a lot. You know, this has got nothing to do with the Nazis or the World War II and definitely any of that stuff. This is about you don't speak what we speak. You don't agree what we do. So we're gonna put you on the sideline. We're gonna do everything we can to push you away, and that's wrong. And we got to fight for what is right. We are in the greatest country in the world, and we have the Constitution. We have great laws, and we got to keep moving forward with peace and love.
Thank you so much. We wish you all the best. Thanks, Antonio.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Despite all the media